Hello and welcome to the second episode of season number 1, 2021, How's Asian the World at Your Fingertips. Thank you for tuning in. And in this one, you know it, we're going to be talking about the French culture. The people who actually invented the word etiquette and showed us what it means about table etiquette. So stay tuned for that. In this one, I'm going to be quoting a book by Pascal Jostil, The Cultural History of France. And on the cover of this book, you find from beautiful age France until present day. Well, they call it a beautiful age because it was an age where, many people can read. 3% or 4% of soldiers back in 1914, they don't know how to read. They were illiterate. So there was a big philosophical thought in France about, making people read. So that stayed literal art or written art in all kind of forms, whether it's newspapers or books or little books or even magazines, were flourishing among the masses. Note that this happened in the 19th century. And the ladies were drawn into the novels of dramatical kind of flair, much like today. Like so many girls like, drama series. But back then, in the 1840, women in France, they used to love reading dramatical books, filled with tears and agony and, So, yeah. And the general public in France back then, 2 centuries ago, they loved reading cheap novels or, novels for the masses. So, yeah, there were those kind of novels or literally work and artistic written articles were very popular because they were cheap and you can find them on the street. I think that is the first stage where the usual newspaper and the magazines actually competed against the conventional book back then. Note that before the First World War, there was like 5 million students, teachers teaching those students basic written and writing skills. But there was an oral kind of culture that still was reminiscent and stayed alive. Like in most educational systems, the first was primary, the basic, which is from 2 until 6, and this one thing to note that every student was required to have 6 books up his sleeves, so the book market was flourishing in the 1890 back in France. One thing that most people know is France in the last century, they tried to cut off completely from the church. That happened in 1905. The Catholic Church, to be exact, they want nothing to do with it in terms of public affairs. And there was a notion of disbelief or atheism rising at that stage, which is like last century. One thing to note about the French culture, that even though there was teachers and students and trying to teach them and perfect the French language, inside each family or inside each geographical location, they would have a separate kind of dialect or the way of speaking or even oral kind of culture, which the teachers left intact because they thought that it's well worth it to preserve. And the essence of teaching those students in those schools was France was an agricultural hub and an agricultural land, and every single one of them should know their place in the hierarchy of the social ladder. An interesting fact that the book mentioned about the cultural historical culture of France is it was required, or the stepping stone for every student, or exceptional students, to know Latin and Greek. And the person who is translating from Latin was a bright student. Well, I think that's it. That's quoting the book, the historical culture of the French culture. from the beautiful age until now, as the book says. Thank you so much for tuning in to this beautiful second episode from season number 1, 2021, by Bizar. Thank you so much for tuning in, and God bless you all around the world. I come from one country, and all of it, if you're interested, text me and I'll tell you exactly where I'm from. Thanks so much, and see you in the next one. Take care.